Hey guys, welcome back to this video. My name is Ola, and today I'm going to talk to you about an investing strategy that could change your portfolio. So, essentially, what am I talking about? Well, I'm gonna give some backstory. So, last year, my friend Josh and I were listening to the Investors Podcast, highly recommended. And there was an episode that featured this guy called Tobias Carlyle, who would describe himself as a quant investor, or I guess a contrarian investor. And he was speaking about the acquirer's multiple and how investing based on deep value is guaranteed to beat the market. So obviously we heard beat the market and we were interested in what that meant. And so we did some research. He published a book actually called The Acquirer's Multiple, obviously. And he goes into exactly what this means. So what is the acquirer's multiple? Why does this have such strong returns when you look at it against other benchmarks like the S&P 500? What does this mean? How can this help you? And so I'll go into that. So essentially, it starts from the name, the acquirer's multiple. This is essentially a metric that you can use, taking the perspective of someone who's about to acquire a company. And so when you do that, you're obviously concerned about all the baggage that comes with this company. I'm talking about the market cap. I'm talking about the cash that the company has on its balance sheets. I'm talking about the debt that the company has, right? All of that is contained in the enterprise value, right? And so you divide that enterprise value by the operating earnings. How much is this company actually making? So you're looking at the revenue minus the SG&A cost, minus depreciation and amortization, and so on, right? And essentially, what the acquires multiple is like an industry level P&E ratio. Now, for anyone who is a retail investor who's played around the markets, probably heard about what a P&E ratio is. Basically, a P&E, you look at the price of a company versus the earnings, kind of gives you a good scale to judge if this is a company worth buying. So this is an industrial scale of that, where you're looking at the perspective of an acquirer and you're saying, okay, how much is this company actually worth and how much is it making? And is this a good buy? Right? And the truth is that a lot of the companies that you find fall into a decent range for the acquirer's multiple are actually companies that you find are at the bottom of their business cycle. And I'll go into what makes these companies appreciate so much in value and how you can actually get a lot of gains back on the money that you invest. So essentially, it's driven by what's called mean reversion. So what do I mean by mean reversion? Basically, mean reversion is the idea that all things go back to normal. So like I mentioned, most of these companies who fall within a certain range for the acquirers multiple, and we'll go into that later, these companies are usually at the bottom of their business cycle. And the truth is that not all these companies are going to appreciate in value. If not, everyone would be a billionaire. Just buy really cheap stocks and you gain a bunch of money. But the truth is that most things tend to revert back to the mean, which is essentially where their name comes from, right? And so what you're doing and what this strategy is a flip on Warren Buffett's ideology, where instead of buying wonderful companies at fair prices, you're buying fair companies at wonderful prices. It works, when you buy these decent companies, right, at the bottom of their business cycle, there's so much more opportunity for capital appreciation and for the stock to appreciate in value. So let's talk about the consequences of mean reversion for investors. What exactly does mean reversion mean for an investor? So first of all, it's like I mentioned previously, you're buying companies that are essentially at the bottom of their business cycle. Usually companies at the bottom of their business cycle are undervalued. Most people don't look at them. They're usually write-offs, despite the fact that these companies have decent financials. And again, like, this strategy isn't necessarily looking for the best companies, right? But you're looking for companies that are necessarily worthy of acquiring, companies that to activist investors can offer some value in terms of what they can do with the business based on their balance sheets, right? So you're looking at companies that are out of favor, companies that are not looked at, right? And again, because they're undervalued, there's a huge opportunity for appreciation in the company's value. The second reason for investors is that usually most of these hype companies and fast growing companies, they tend to slow down. And the truth is that as these slow down, they become less profitable. There's less profit to make. And so as a result, therein lies opportunity for these undervalued or outlooked outcast stocks, where now they have an opportunity to appreciate in value, to appreciate in profits, and essentially continue that cycle that drives the market essentially. So that's what that means for investors. Now I'm going to go into why or reasons why the acquires multiple, and essentially why this strategy is important, and for you as an investor, why you should consider going with this investing strategy. And so, like I mentioned, because you're taking the outlook of an acquirer, someone potentially looking to acquire a company, you're looking at a company with a full scope. You're looking at how much cash does it have on its balance sheet? How much debt does it have? Now, this is stuff that isn't necessarily accounted for in your typical P&E ratio, right? And so, in looking at companies with extra cash on their balance sheet with little debt, you find that some of these companies actually have value and they're actually worth acquiring, right? Because you're taking a whole holistic look at this company and all it has to offer. The second reason is that most of these boring, scary businesses, or businesses that you would consider bad at the bottom of their business cycle, they're actually not as bad as you think. And there's actually so much value that these companies have, even from the perspective of an activist investor who's looking to maybe buy a majority stake in a company, and they see, oh, this company has a decent amount of cash. They can decide to use this cash to essentially drive the transformation of this company. And that leads into my next point, is that most of these poorly managed companies, and really that's what drives performance, or I guess the outlook that most of these companies have, is just poor management. And so for an outside investor that sees that this company has something they can leverage, like some extra cash, little debt, good earnings, they can come in and they can turn these companies around. An example, and I know this is a meme stock, everyone like, oh, GameStop. But the truth is that GameStop, um, I forgot what his name is, but he was the CEO of Chewy, right? He essentially bought majority stake at GameStop. And what he did was based on his knowledge of how he transformed the online business of Chewy, his idea was to do that for GameStop, because GameStop, which funny enough actually fell under the acquires multiple when we started the strategy, had decent cash and had like minimum debt or a little debt in its balance sheets. And so essentially, these are the kind of companies you're looking at that are not as bad as they seem. Now I'm going to pass it over to Josh, and he's going to go through a few of the companies that we bought. And stay tuned, guys. Can't wait to see you guys next time.